Well met. This has been Brode, and you're watching Born to be
Cosmo.
Oh, snap.
Welcome to a off-week episode of Born to be Cosmo. We're off this week. As most of you are aware, we meet, twice a month. But
except when we don't.
Except when we don't. Well, we were chatting, and there was a lot to talk about, and a lot of good conversation. We thought that this would make for good content.
This prevents a 12-hour epised next time.
No, it really won't. But maybe it'll prevent it this time. We'll see. But it's been an interesting week. Obviously, a lot has happened since we last met a week ago, which is kind of insane. Let's just get right into it and keep it Cosmo. All right, so kind of starting things off just really quickly, we had our final OTA change where the final OTA change on the weekly cadence. And essentially what they've announced is that they're going to continue to do this with a gap. So every second update, excluding the weeks where they push out the full patch. So we're going to see the OTA updates continue, just, less often. Going back to what they've changed, really quickly, they hit a few cards that were very common in the meta until everything changed.
The timing is a little sus. It's like, probably could have left them, but
well, you flashed ahead, so they kind of revealed some insights, and I thought that was interesting and makes sense. But they hit Black Bolt and Stature, which were two of the best performing cards in the game prior to the wave change that was made a week ago Thursday, so like a week and a half ago from when this is airing. And they reduced Black Bolt and Stature by 1, which is a little bit of a touch-up. Probably still very good. I think that the change to wave hitting Stature so that it costs 4 now instead of 1 on that final turn is probably the bigger oof than the power change from 7 to 6. But all that being said, they said that even with these changes of wave, Stature still felt really good into the field. So they opted to make this change to Black Bolt Stature. 2 buffs, 1 to Negasonic, Teenage Warhead, upping the power from 4 to 5. And Invisible Woman, upping the power from 2 to 3. So interesting buffs there, particularly for Invisible Woman.
Yeah, that was an interesting one for me. Like,
it's actually, people are doing neat things with it. The buff, whenever you're buffing a card, these cheap cards, you always feel it a lot more. And 2/2s, you have to usually have a pretty powerful effect to justify a 2/2 because it's such a mediocre amount of stats. And the big problem Invisible Woman had was you were very telegraphing what you were doing. So if your opponent interacted with you, like with an arrow or just if play a Cosmo in the lane, you were kind of done. But now nobody's playing those cards. Those cards are not as common as they once were. And now Invisible Woman's better, and she's been showing up in a lot of different lists, making a return in Patriot, which used to run her, but then stopped. And then now with all the Enchantress going around still, this kind of shores up your biggest weakness in Patriot, which is getting Enchantress.
Yep.
Especially in these new versions with Iron Man and Lad and Onslaught, where you really want to stack your lane. This actually seems like now it's just a decent tempo play that protects your game plan, which is pretty cool. I don't think anyone saw this buff coming. I don't think this was on anyone's buff list. Same with Negasonic, which probably doesn't really matter, but it's kind of cute because you can run it in Cerebro 5 with what's it called? Nimrod. I was running, sadly Cerebro 5 lost Sandman though, so I don't think it's actually that good, but I played it for the brief period of time Sandman was a 5. I played Cerebro 5 with Nimrod and Sandman. and it was kind of cool. It was pretty fun.
It sounds fun and like Negasonic copium Warhead.
I really wonder, like, what do you do with this card? I mean, I bought this card for 6K. I was one of the people who bought this one, and at the time, it was fun because it was like this really like narrow Shuri answer because Shuri was dominant, and you could just predict the Shuri and slam the Negasonic, and then they both explode, and it felt great.
Can you slam it into a Galactus lane?
You could. You definitely could. I think I beat a Galactus once doing that where I played Negasonic and something else in Negasonic, and they just had like null, and their null exploded. It was beautiful.
Does it trigger before, like, how does the ordering trigger? It's not an on reveal, right? It's just
No, it's just like it's an ongoing without the text. So basically,
it's a trigger.
Yeah, whoever plays a card there after Negasonic's on the field, they both explode.
Does their
so
on reveal trigger first? Yeah,
because that happens before they are seen on the field. So the on reveal still happens. So you don't want to do it if like they're going second with Galactus. But if the Galactus already went off, like I just played a 3-drop and then Negasonic.
Oh, so you just kill their null or their death or whatever. Yeah.
It's not going to work most of the time if they have more than one card, but it's pretty hilarious the times it does work. But it's just kind of a hard card to really find a home for right now.
Yeah, they keep trying to sell it to me, and I keep not buying it. I'm waiting.
You're probably making the right decision.
I'm waiting to get this one for free.
Yeah.
So when Negasonic was released, it had a 0.4% play rate instead of 40. Is that what you're saying, Zombies?
Yeah. I believe
Invisible Woman's interesting too, because in addition to everything that you said, the elephant in the room is that keeping your cards face down is pretty good when you're opposite a Cyclops or the Thing or things like that.
Yeah, any of the negative power stuff, it's fairly good against. And that's why I think tonight's location is probably going to be good against the Evo stuff because people can just hide their cards, and then your cards won't get reduction, and they're at least not until the end of the game.
How did they announce the Dark Dimension in advance, or was this kind of like a late addition that was subbed in?
They have it scheduled, I think, through June is what Safety told me, but we just don't know about I think the new locations are the question marks.
Got it.
And also that surprise one we got, which we should definitely talk about at some point.
Oh, Blue, they deleted your favorite location. I'm so sorry.
Oh yeah, the locations. That was the other huge thing that happened.
Yeah.
The locations. So they said, "Hey, we have heard you. After all this time, we've seen them adjust locations before, but this was straight up. Hey, we're gonna remove these, and then we're gonna rework them, and we'll bring them back later because they didn't like." And I think the thing they noted in particular was they didn't like the frequency in which like double lockdown locations were popping up together. So what was it? It was Milano, Plunder Castle, and what was
Sandbar.
The last one? Sandbar.
Those locations helped me hit infinite.
Yeah, this was actually a nerf to the lane lock deck, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because lane lock liked those, but everyone seemed to like this change. I think people were getting sick of not being able to play their cards, which makes sense in a card game. You want to play your cards.
There's still Sanctum Sanctorum and Crimson Cosmos.
Oh, there's still plenty of them. It's nice to see them react to the feedback, at least.
So,
finally.
Fun fact, if you go to the Born to be Cosmo Twitter account, our location is Plunder Castle. So we might have to relocate until it comes back. So we'll need to find a new home. So I'm open to suggestions. But yeah, Plunder Castle. Not sad to see that one go. Although funny enough, for all the grief that I gave Plunder Castle, I think objectively the Sandbar was more egregious.
Oh, the Sandbar was.
Yeah, that was. I hated that location so very much.
Yeah,
it was not a fun location. I didn't mind it as much when it was just popping up, but man, the day where it came out and we had like a day of it, I did not enjoy that at all.
Yeah. So, moving on, I think that with the Black Bolt and Stature changes, especially after Wave was adjusted, there was a lot of, there's always been a lot of feedback. Second dinners behind the curve. They always seem to be late in making changes. And in their defense, that seemed really true with the Shuri and Red Skull fiasco that went on for what seemingly felt like a very long time. But with the OTA updates, it feels like things have been better.
Yep.
Still, this one felt a little bit behind the curve, and so
They're always about a week behind, right? Because they lock
yeah.
these in
So
like a week in
someone
advance.
asked straight up on the Marvel Snap Discord, like, "What's the deal? You always seem to be behind. What's your cadence?" And basically, Glenn said that they are a week behind insofar as that they lock the OTA changes a week before they go live. They do this to localize the notes and QA the changes, and so this makes sense. I mean, Marvel Snap, how many different languages is it supported in? French, Spanish, Korean, Portuguese.
It's a lot,
A lot.
Yeah, list goes on. So
Large number.
yeah, I mean, even relatively simple changes takes time, and you can't just literally translate everything, otherwise it doesn't read properly, and so you need to so that's what localization comes in. You can just take your text and throw it in Chat GPT and say, write this in Korean, it will not read properly, I assure you.
Yeah.
Although maybe one day it will, but not today. And then QA, I think that's very important as well. And we've seen what happens when things don't get QA'd properly, or even when they are, and things just go below or go over under the safeguards. So things are about a week out. I think that the wave change was so consequential that it just amplified this. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. That's kind of the meat and potatoes of why we're here tonight. Everyone thinks that this is Blue's going to complain about high Evo. That's true, I may, but I actually am more interested in the cause. So I think that there's a lot of causes that have created the situation that we are in, and then that's the effect. That's the symptom. So, anyways, we'll talk about that in just a second. But yeah, as far as the OTA updates, I'm happy they're continuing with them. I mean, I don't really know what else there is to say about that. I think it was a successful pilot, and I think that most people, I dare say, are enthused to see it continue. I haven't heard any dissension.
Yeah.
The dissenting voice, like, no, I don't want OTA updates. I don't think I've heard one. So
No.
I've
or read
seen
one.
a few people who
Oh,
don't
yeah?
like that things are changing so quickly, but I think the
Okay.
majority of like the discourse around the game and whatnot, people have generally been pretty happy with stuff because, like, worst case, they're relatively not consequential, but they give you a reason to try out a card you might not have played much before. I think like we see that a lot with Invisible Woman right now. Like, who is playing Invisible Woman outside the Hella or Cerebro 2 gamers, some of which were not too enthused with this change. Cerebro 2, pour one out for their defensive card. But hey, Cerebro 3, now they get to mess around with it. But yeah, I think the OTAs were good, and it's cool they're doing. They're gonna keep doing them, and I also think doing them like once a week was probably not like overly sustainable. You don't want them just changing stuff for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And there are only so many cards in the game. Like, they'd run out of cards to change pretty quickly.
Well, yeah, they shouldn't be changing for change sake, only if needed, if to bump something down a tiny bit or bump something up a tiny bit.
Yeah,
but
and that's generally what they've done with them, which is why I think it's been well received. Like, they're not nuking anything super hard, and they're making some bad cards less bad, and that's good because you want more reason to play some of these not great cards, and that's kind of what they're doing. So we'll see. It sounds like it's gonna be like 2 OTAs. Like, you'll get one right before a patch off week. Like, they basically they added an off week into the equation. So we'll still be getting them, just not like every week.
that's fine. Every week might be a little bit overkill anyways. I mean,
Yeah.
it was good to do their like backlog of updates, but now that they're like, I think everything is okay.
It feels like they're a bit more caught up with, because like the biggest complaint, right, was the fact that we had to deal with Shuri for so long and they were so slow about changing it, and then when they changed it, they did like the baby steps. And yeah, so it's nice to see it doesn't feel like that anymore, where like they're taking things super slowly in terms of like adjusting stuff, but they're also not making crazy adjustments, but also because it hasn't felt like they've been super needed with a lot of things. Like, we knew the Black Bolt thing was coming, even though it was so funny seeing the reactions to Black Bolt, Because I think most of the stuff I saw from people were shocked that they did this because I don't think people realized how good Black Bolt actually
The
was.
highest win rate card in the game for a very long time. Yeah.
Yeah, and they joke about it too. This was not on our bingo card for the year, and it's because who thought so? He lived his leech arc, like he became.
I did I hate to be that guy, but I'm gonna be like, didn't I call? I think if you roll the tape back a couple pods, didn't I say Black Bolt was gonna get nerfed?
Yeah.
Yeah,
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 it was on
yeah.
a
Just for
prediction.
too good
So
for too long.
remember that as I prognosticate the future, looking at what we have presently. So do bear that in mind that my track record is, greater than 0, which means absolutely nothing, but I'm going to stand by it.
Yeah.
No, I mean I called it. I called what I saw. It had an exceedingly high win rate and play rate, and so
Yeah.
it only made sense. Although, to be perfectly honest, I thought the wave change more than made work of it. But anyways, I mean that's
Yeah, I
here nor
think
there.
that's what I think it scared a lot of people off of it, but I guess it didn't make it as bad as I thought it did. And
Not being
if
able to play Stature for one after a wave was kind of what I think would have
yeah, that
scared a lot.
definitely feels like it was knocking it off the tier 1 peg, but I also wonder like because they're definitely looking at a larger amount of data than we're gonna have access to, right? So I wonder if
Yeah.
they were seeing it still do really well like across all the ranks pre-infinite rather than looking at like the higher part of
Even
the.
with the data we have, even post change, it is still doing well, and we'll review
Yeah,
that
it's not
in
a
a
bad
second.
deck. It's just a classic, like, oh, this deck got nerfed. I don't want to play a nerfed deck. When it's like, well, there's a reason it got nerfed. It was really, really good.
Yeah, in fact, it has a low play rate, but right now at infinite, it is the best deck in the game.
Or it had the best
Well,
numbers, right? As
it
of
it so okay, so like it's let's say it's tied for best deck in the game with high Evo lane control, bounce, and the stature deck. Although caution, it's very early. This is data as of the high Evo release.
there's
So
a few
you got to
days.
take
Yeah.
everything with a giga grain of salt. Also, the play rates for high Evo are super inflated. So why don't we pivot and talk a little bit about that? So
Yeah, let
we've
me
got a lot.
yeah, here, wait, let me
This just in. Breaking news. Live from the Daily Bugle. Parker!
all right.
Parker! Got to get the bumper in, right?
Yeah, that's
So
great.
I want to structure this conversation into 2 distinct parts, and this will be hard. This will be an exercise in discipline for us all, least of all me. So there's the actuals, the meta portion of it, the high evolution itself, the rate of play, the decks that we're seeing, the interactions. And then there's kind of the more kind of broad meta part of it, which is why is the play rate so high? Why are we seeing what we're seeing right now? And I kind of want to start there because I think that there's a natural predisposition, and you talked a little bit about this before, Zombies, in terms of why high Evo is so popular. And I want you to share those thoughts with our audience. But I think that in addition to that, there was a delay in high Evo being released. It was meant to release on Tuesday or Monday night. Was it Monday night or Tuesday morning? I don't remember. Monday night at reset, and it didn't appear, and there was an issue.
Oh yeah. Oh god.
The issue was how the Howard the Duck sales were too low.
Yeah.
I'm
Double
kidding,
ducks.
Yeah, so no, they had an issue with their OTA mechanisms that does the changeover. There was nothing wrong with the card itself, but with the infrastructure. And the only way they could change this was with the release of a patch. And to their credit, they got it out a couple days later on Thursday, mobile, PC, without a hitch. And that was pretty quick turnaround. So kudos. But I think that anticipation of the card, because it offered such a compelling, not just enhancing a deck archetype, but offering several new decks. A lot of people were interested in it. It's cool. But I think that delay kind of amplified it and increased the hype for it. And I think that when it finally released, I suspect that the purchase rates of it were higher because of that unanticipated delay, even though they would have been high. So I think that there was that kind of that anticipation and build up. And then, of course, with it being a long weekend in the United States, a lot of people have a little bit of extra time to game that maybe otherwise wouldn't, and they want to play with their new toy, and the play rates are really high.
Well,
but yeah,
they also like the last couple cards that they released were kind of stinkers, right? We've got like Stegron and we've got Howard the Duck, and then you've got I know, I'm sorry, I know
Fighting
there's
words.
that people are gonna get mad,
Stegon OP.
but like those are interesting cards. Like I really would love to play with Howard the Duck, but I'm not paying 6,000 tokens for it. No way. But like, this card is like meta warping or meta defining. Like this is like something that is going to drastically change things. And so there's so many people that were going to buy it, and I think that it's just the play rate of the other stuff is low. Like we've talked about it many times before, so I don't want to harp on it too much. But the idea that there's a scarcity of tokens, and so you really have to use your tokens on like the thing that you've been saving for. And I think for a lot of people, this was it.
Well, that's the other thing, right? So there's that anticipation, and then they decided to make High Evolutionary a big bad. So there's a lot
fuel to the fire.
Yeah, fuel to the fire, because when a card releases, a lot of people are like, well, it doesn't take that long for it to drop down to Series 4, so maybe I'll wait. But if it's 6,000, and it's doing a cool thing you want, then there's no reason to wait. So it actually enhances the desire factor, right?
It pushes them over the edge where people are otherwise like, well, I'm not 100% sold on a card, so I'll wait and I'll see what people do with it, and then when it rotates, maybe I'll pick it up or open it. And with the big bads, that's never going to happen. So people just buy it.
Can we just like right now, for once and for all, just kind of put this whole notion to bed that gatekeeping cards at 6,000 tokens somehow magically reduces rate of play? Like you could be for big bads, you could be against big bads, but people are like, well, I like it because it's going to mean that less people are going to play it and the meta's not going to be saturated. We saw this happen with Thanos already, so we knew it wasn't true. But I think this slice of like Thursday to Saturday has unequivocally proved that this is just not true, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, so no matter where you fall on this, can we no longer have that as a discussion point? I'll be sure to lurk in your YouTube comment section, zombies, and lecture people who bring this point up. But
no, it's just it's funny to see how that does come up a bunch, where people are like, oh no, the whole you want scarce cards. It's like a good thing, and you feel good about your investment and all that stuff, and it's like it's only because of the scarcity that you have to like feel that way to begin with. But we're seeing like, and also because people are so afraid to spend their tokens, they're just gonna buy these. Like this is what they're gonna spend on, and it makes sense why they're spending on it. So it's
and for the free to play player that's been like slowly saving up tokens, all the cards that work with high Evo, like they have them all, right? And so it's like, oh, I can play this like however you want to build it. Like even if I want to play all of the cards, like I could jam them all in a deck, and maybe that works at lower elos. But I think it was very enticing for the people that have been sitting on tokens for a long time. But I don't know. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but like we've talked about it before, and the idea of big bads, like I wish they'd just get rid of them. Because the gatekeeping at 6K, it's like, all right, when's it gonna, like, I think Blue said it last time. It was like, well, when are they gonna have like a big good, What happens when we have some kind of like super Spider-Man or super Captain America or
Series
like.
Incoming. I don't even want to joke about it because that might come true.
Yeah,
but more to the point, I think that the biggest reason why people were excited for High Evo and why we're seeing its unprecedented rate of play for something new. I mean, I can't hope to match your eloquence, Zombies. So please, share your thoughts on that.
Well, like you don't get very many new decks in Snap. It's just not a thing that, due to how the game introduces cards, one, you don't get very many new decks, and two, when there are new decks, they're not always super accessible. But like the big thing is you're just not getting new decks a whole ton, I think. And so when you do get one card that essentially builds you like a whole new deck itself, people are pretty stoked about that. Like people are pretty happy. Um, and so it kind of makes sense why the play rate's so insane, because like you had a perfect storm of it's a big bad, so people feel confident in purchasing with their tokens. It's a card that is making cards that you like. There are a lot of cards in the game. I think it was in an early interview with Ben Brode where like someone asked him like why does Cyclops suck? I want Cyclops to be good.
Yep.
He's cool. He's my favorite X-Man. I want him to be cool. And then Ben said something joking about how Cyclops was always like the most boring X-Men. But now, for all those people out there who like Cyclops, he's now just not a boring, maybe you put this in Patriot card. He
Well,
actually does something, and that's super cool. And you know, one other thing that I think added to this, at least to me, and I bet it's the case for other people, they nailed the animations on this. The animations are so
they're
cool
really good. Yeah.
that they did, like the cool glowy effect around the evolved cards, like unique animations for Cyclops and the thing, and
Yeah, I
I think
love
they
how the
even gave
thing like
Abomination one too.
tosses like a fire hydrant, like a girder,
Yeah,
like
and if
you
you
know,
have
it's
Luke
like
Cage, it bounces off. It's hilarious.
yeah,
Like
yeah, it's
it brings a smile to my face every time I see it. It's just such a fun little attention to detail, and it doesn't like it doesn't add anything to the gameplay, but it adds to the enjoyment for me. I like the little animations.
They're
Um,
so clean. Yeah, I agree.
it shows a lot of work went into like the card and all the stuff around it, and
Just
uh,
wait like until like we keep watching the unreleased variants and stuff, and I know not next month is the Spider-Man stuff, and then the following month they're bringing in the Phoenix Force.
oh
Like
yeah,
from a I hate to bring the show in this direction, but from a lore
a lore
perspective,
perspective.
if you've read the Phoenix Force like issues and stuff, like there's only a handful of heroes that like turn into like the Phoenix 5 or whatever, but Cyclops was one of them. His Phoenix Force costume is super cool, and like I could see how you could get a character like this and be like, yeah, this is an iconic character, why does he suck? And I remember when they buffed Wolverine, and I think that
Mhm.
was
Yeah, same
that was
thing,
the
right?
rationale
Like
though, right? It was like, hey, this is
yeah.
an iconic character and no one's playing him because he's awful, like, so we're gonna make him a little bit better.
And that
Okay.
was great because like nobody played Wolverine before, and now Wolverine actually has a bit of a home in like Discard and Galactus, and they he's not OP or anything, but he's like a playable card, and I think
and
that should be what you want for like some of these really, because
I
that's
think
what like drives people to the game. Like I guarantee there are
yeah.
probably a ton of people who play the game who it's just like I just like playing. Not even if it's like good necessarily. I just play my Guardians of the Galaxy deck or whatever.
And I think finally, and this is the last point, I think this is kind of lesser than the others, but I think it's still something that factors in for a certain segment of the player base, which is why, when we look at the rates of play for high Evo, it's not just in a pocket of ladder. It's everywhere because it's actually a pretty good budget purchase, right?
Yes,
Take the
it is.
wheel, take the wheel, and chat. Just set it perfectly. Like you don't need a null to go with it or something else. These are all
You don't need
with the
any
except.
Series 4 card to go with High Evo to make a
Yep.
functional deck. And you barely need any Series 3. Like if you want to go full High Evo, the three cards that are like good to have for it are like She-Hulk, which not all builds need, but it's a neat bonus. Wasp is one of the big ones because it's one of the High
Yeah.
Evo cards, but even if you're not fully done with Pool 3, if you played during the season pass with Wasp, you just got her. And then
Yeah.
Luke Cage is the other one where you don't necessarily need it, but it is really, really good with all the mirror matches going around.
We'll talk about my
Yeah,
my
your
my
your
my
favorite
main
card.
my main man Luke in a second, but yeah, Wasp is probably the most expensive piece, and relative to that, between the battle pass and the fact that it will be frustrating for that one person that wants to high Evo that just can't get Wasp because you can't. I don't know. Series 3, the acquisition system is still has much to leaves much to be desired. And I think that
Mhm.
that what's driving a lot of the play here it really kind of harkens back to that, right? Big bad, not many new things. Sure, you said this also, Zombies, that a lot of the new cards make existing archetypes more interesting or exciting, like MODOK or Nimrod or Hitmonkey, but like this is a new deck. And it's
New
changed everything.
decks too, right? It's not even just one, and that's why I think we're going to see like a longer tail on this than we've seen with like previous cards. Because like this is just my experience with the game. I've played a lot of the different decks in the game, and when a new card comes out, I'll usually have like a day or two of just trying out like a bunch of different stuff with it, and then I kind of settle on what I like, and then I'll move on to other stuff. Like I'll still play with the card, but it's easy to do most of your experimenting because there are only so many options because it's just one card, and usually one card doesn't easily slot into a lot of decks, or if it does, like Jeff, it's not drastically altering what your deck's trying to do. It's just kind of a good card you play because it's a good card, and it's just consistent in what it does. It's more of it's not adding to the synergy of the deck most of the time. It's just a good card that helps your deck do better things. Whereas with Evo, it's like there's so many ways to build it. Like I still have a bunch of stuff I want to try with it because you don't need to put all the high Evo cards in a deck. Like you can, and it works. But then you're really all in, right? And that's why, and we'll talk about that with like Luke Cage, becomes really relevant. But if you're not all in, like I was playing the Darkhawk version, and Darkhawk you don't really, because Darkhawk's kind of a curve deck, right? Like you want to play on curve a lot, so you don't really want to be playing like the Hulk in that deck because you're going to be curving out. But I just put in 3 cards from the high Evo. I put in Shocker, Cyclops, and the Thing. And Shocker acts as like a budget Zabu because like half of your deck is 4 cost. So a lot of the times your leftmost card will be a 4 cost. So if you don't get Zabu, you can go Shocker into 4-drop still, which is like kind of what the deck wants to do. Cyclops is not really all that needed. I think I play him more just because he's fun. But like he just gives you something to play on 3, and then if you float it all, he gets kind of enough value to justify him. But if you see a lot of Galactus, you probably just want to put in Debris because the deck doesn't have like very much against Galactus other than Shang. But you basically just try and counter their big stuff with Shang, and then you have your own big stuff with Darkhawk, and you have Doom to go wide. And it's basically just the Doom Darkhawk deck, but you put in a small high Evo package, and it just kind of works pretty well without having to be like all in on the theme of the different cards.
I've seen so many different variants of different decks, but with high Evo, like with the high Evo package, right? We've seen lane control, we've seen Galactus, we've seen the Sarah decks or whatever. I mean, there's just, you can kind of slot it into anything. It's pretty interesting. It
does seem as though there's one kind of bubbling to the top, or 2, I should say. But you're right. You've got Thanos Lockjaw high Evo. You've got plain old Lockjaw high Evo. You've got lane control. You've got kind of just more of a straight up kind of game plan. You said, Nate, on your son's account, which is, in the 50s, you saw someone playing Patriot high Evo head scratch.
The number of 20 plus attack Hulks that I have seen is just insane.
Yeah.
And like it's kind of gross, but yeah, I mean, it did create a new archetype, and I think we were talking about it off air before we started recording, but the idea that, hey, yeah, the super plugged in engaged players are probably an infinite already or very close to it. And really, we jokingly call it casual mode, right? Because that's where you can play cards and decks with no consequence. And so we're all trying out this new card to see how it works and how we want to play it and what we want to do with it, and then getting sick of it because we're seeing it everywhere. And then I think the data is so fresh that it's not quite reliable yet because it's just changing so much. The real question is going to be a week from now when ladder resets on, in about a week, right? Then what? When there's stakes on the line, like.
So I think that while the data is still pretty fresh and things are going to shift and the rate of play will drop, I think that we can confidently make a few conclusions. There's going to be one or several tier 1 decks that include high Evo, and it's going to have a high rate of play because, well, people have acquired the card and people like winning. I think that this whole saga started with the change to Wave. And so even before, we look at High Evo and its astonishing 40% plus play rate that we have right now, in certain ladder segments, according to the data from Untapped, the change to Wave just fundamentally was a shift in the game. And so what ended up happening post Wave was things started to kind of fall into two camps, right? Didn't happen right away, but you had the Kitty Pride decks, right, which were very strong, which are very strong. I shouldn't use them in the past tense, and Wave, which now basically removed traditional archetypes that relied on the discount or weakened ones that did, like Stature Black Bolt. And so you were kind of like on Team Kitty or Team Wave. Now with High Evo coming in, right, it feels like they've kind of created a situation where if things hold, and they may not, for all we know, someone discovers the nutty meta breaker that we never thought of and takes us in a completely different direction. But assuming things hold, you're going to have people playing Kitty Pride, but that's going to decrease because people don't like playing decks that lose to one card. That's Wave. You play Wave against a Bounce or even a Sarah control deck. There are things you can do to try and mitigate that, but let's be real, it feels Galactus is good into High Evo and Wave, but our resident principal data scientist, Second Dinner, that posted good High Evo decks on Twitter, had a card in almost all of them that at first looks like a little bit of a head scratcher, but starts to make a lot of sense. Debris, which basically is the Wave for Galactus. You play Debris, Galactus loses. Galactus, being a pretty good potential counter into, both of those decks. So you got this triangle of like spam decks, Wave decks, or just, decks that are not susceptible to Wave, like High Evo, certain builds of High Evo, and then Galactus. And so the High Evo decks seem to be a little bit more resilient. Also, I was whining about this before the games, before the pod started, because there's so much diversity with High Evo. You don't know if it's going to be Lockjaw or Lane Lock or whatever, all these different varieties. It's very hard to play into it because, like, so if I'm playing Control Sarah and I have the Sarah setup, generally you want to snap, but like, are they going to play something that's going to disrupt me? I don't know, because there's so much variance that it makes it very difficult to try and anticipate that. Whereas the Evo player knows, like Sarah control, I can anticipate their actions. That gives them a distinct advantage as well. So I think you're going to see the play rate stay high, and it's winning. I mean, even Kitty Pride, everyone got Kitty Pride. The play rate of Bounce was high. It was 10%. But the play rate for High Evo is 40%. To your point, I shouldn't be so fixated on that number because within there are several archetypes. But I think what we're starting to see is that consolidation, right? The crummier versions, people try them. They're like, right now, everyone's Safety Blade was saying, when am I going to stop seeing Lockjaw Casino High Evo on ladder? And my answer was pretty soon, because it sucks. Relative to like some of the other ones that we see with like Spider-Man and Storm. So I think it's here to stay. And I think that what's going to end up happening is people are going to kind of ride the wave and have fun with it for the next week. But when ladder resets, like you said, Nate, I think that perhaps, people are not going to be so fond of where we are. And I don't know what the answer is, because, what do you do? If you hit Wave, then everything that Wave is holding down just comes out of control and becomes tier S. So there isn't really a clean answer. So I think what probably the Second Dinner team is going to do is they're going to wait and see. It's early days, and hope that the meta evolves, or perhaps the Spider-Men of June may shake things up enough to give them a little bit more room to maneuver. But yeah, it's really interesting. And the play rate being 40% is completely unprecedented. I mean, they're talking about nerfing Galactus, and that's seeing like a 14% play rate between 80 and 90, 99, and at Infinite.
What was Sherry's number? What was she? Wasn't
20.
she like high? She was
20%.
Like 20. Okay.
20%. Yeah.
So it's double Sherry essentially.
But remember, whilst Shuri Red Skull was 20%, you had the other deck, which was not quite as high, but still like in the teens with Thanos Lockjaw. So it felt like a really like, you
It was
know,
a 2-deck format.
It
Yeah.
was at the time, yeah.
I think what we have here is probably going to become a three, more than a 3-deck format, but like a
They're three
three.
pillars, right? Like
Yeah,
it's you're going to have the wave stuff, and they're like a bunch
and the
of different
things that are
things you can do
not
with it.
weak to wave.
Yeah, and then you're gonna have Kitty Pride, and the I guess Sarah falls in the same bucket because
The
some Kitty
spam
decks are
pillar.
Sarah decks. Yeah, the spam like play a lot of cards. Kitty's usually involved. That's one of them. Waves the other, and then the third pillar is basically whatever beats wave decks
Galactus.
or can beat both of those. And Galactus is something that can beat both of those decks. So I expect the Galactus play rate to continue to balloon upwards.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Galactus and Kitty are so fragile to wave and debris that it's like, you know,
I think
it's
the
tough.
Destroy Galactus honestly can get through a lot of the tech, at least the debris tech. I think the Destroy version's probably the way to go with Galactus right now. Like the
Hmm.
Destroyer backup condition with Nimrod and all that. Like I think
I don't
if
know.
I were playing Galactus, that's probably what I would try.
I've tried the Nimrod package so many times and I just do not like it. But I think that, I mean, however you want to build it, my personal advice is like just stick Killmonger in it. I'm still totally sold on Killmonger and Galactus between the bad locations and the rocks and the squirrels and the debris
The
and all
squirrels.
the other, and then all these one drops, right? Like if we're going to start seeing more nebulas and misty nights and night crawlers and kitty
Oh yeah,
prides,
if you're
like
seeing a lot of this high evo lane lock, especially the one KM posted, which I'm sure is gonna become popular because that's usually what happens. Like just run Killmonger. That deck leans so hard on like Nebula and Sunspot and to a lesser extent Misty. Like that deck, I feel like you really
the little
do not
ones.
appreciate the Monger.
Yeah, the little ones we don't care so much about, but the ones that get out of control, it's your like sunspots and your nebulas and your kitty prides. It clears your debris lanes like with the rocks, and then
Yeah, it's really good right now.
like Thanos stones, right? It can blow up Infinity Stones as well. So
Yeah.
So Thanos stones are such a liability right now into the EO decks. It's so sad. But going back to those 3 pillars, I agree. You've got those 3 pillars. You've got spam, you've got wave and things that are not weak to wave, which is basically the Evo stuff and Galactus. So you've got such a fine balancing act that like it's like if you pull on a thread to try and change something in terms of balance, you risk unwinding the whole unraveling the whole tapestry. And so I don't like that high evo is such a high rate of play. And I do think that for those who are saying, "Oh, Blue, calm down. It's early days. Its play rate will decrease." It will. Although to what remains to be seen from 40%. But I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know what the answer is,
it's
right? I
tricky
mean, even
though.
if
I mean, if you look at it from the data perspective, it's not the same as a card that it only is played in one archetype, right? Like Kitty Pride or whatever, where it's like, all right, well, you play this in a bounce deck,
but
or
I think that there's going to be 1 or 2 Evo archetypes that are going to kind of float to the top. And I
yeah,
think
there
that's
will be.
already
There,
starting to
yeah,
happen.
yeah.
Like if you look at the data that I've curated from Untapped right before the show, you know, the pre-infinite one, I think that you already see that because you have high Evo divided into 2 categories, right? You've got high Evo, which I think is listing a 26 or 27% rate of play. And that's like all the things mashed into one. And then you've got at the top control. Now, if you drill into control, that's lane lock high evo with things like Spider-Man, Storm, etc., which is boasting a much higher win rate and popularity. I think that as they collect more data, they'll be able to split out the other high Evo archetypes. But I think that the 2 best is kind of the lane control and kind of the more just classic kind of package. Although I suspect you'll see it splashed. You were talking earlier, Zombies, about the Dark Hawk version of High Evo. I was chuckling because I'm like, has anyone played that but you?
Hmm.
They should. They
Not
should.
many.
They should, because it's very good, and you rolled me with it. Although, not a little ashamed to admit it, but it's the truth. But I think that you'll see things really consolidate. But yeah, if you take control and high evo, it's almost 40%. Post infinite, things look a little bit different, but it still has a very high rate of play, 31%. The top of tier C with a low win rate. But then you go to control. 56.5% win rate with an 8.6%. So also kind of zeroing in at 40%. Although what's really interesting at Infinite is that there's another deck that has a 56% win rate, although a very low rate of play, Stature. Now, what's interesting about that is when they nerfed Black Bolt and Stature, and people were like, the heck, guys, you didn't need to nerf it. Wave already took care of that for you. They noted that even with the wave change, it felt like Stature and Black Bolt still had an edge on all the high Evo decks. So maybe that's the nutty meta breaker. Maybe that's what I should be trying to play, because clearly for those that are dedicated, for the 1% that's dedicated to the Stature archetype, they're posting good results. And I mean, look, they're playing high Evo decks, because if you queue up a game of Marvel Snap right now,
Oh, you were gonna hit it. Yeah.
You're gonna hit it. Like, 40% is really high, but I think the numbers might even be higher, or at least my small sample size with high variances. But yeah, I mean, perhaps maybe that's the meta breaker. I don't know, but you looking at these numbers, that bounce is still looking really good, but again, they're fragile. Galactus is looking decent. So it's a very interesting meta. I don't like what happens when a deck becomes so prevalent. And I'm calling this the Luke Cage effect, but really what I should be calling it is the Super Skrull effect, because that was the first time we saw that really become a thing, where like Patriot was like the hotness, and then all of a sudden people were playing Super Skrull in the mirror, and it's just like, oh no. Super Skrull's not a good card. I'm sorry for those that really like it.
People are still playing it. I ran into one today that got my null. It was like I was not expecting it.
It just
and
won
it's
a big tournament, so expect to see more of it.
Well, it's interesting because in Snap the tech cards are pretty good typically, but I don't know. Super Scroll is like the copium. I don't.
Luke Cage is
it
like
works. It just feels really, really. It's like an all or nothing, right? It's the Eater of Secrets. Like,
I was just about to say that exact thing. Eater of Secrets.
It's
well,
bad
and so people are jamming Luke Cage and everything now to combat high Evo. Is that the?
Oh yeah. Well, see, the whole thing is it all depends on what kind of Evo decks people are playing, and because what a lot of people have latched onto is either just going all in with the Afflict or all in on like both themes. You can shut down like half of their deck with one card, and then it just doesn't function quite as good because you want to be floating, but you're no longer like getting rewarded for it outside of the Hulk or maybe Sunspot.
Right.
It really does mess up the deck quite a bit, and like the opportunity cost is kind of low. So you run it for the mirror and you run it for other high Evo decks because there's just so many of them that you're gonna get value from it most of the time. I don't think you need to run it, but like in the Darkhawk version, I put Jeff in instead, and Jeff won me some games that Luke Cage would not have won me because he was able to move. But like then I put Luke Cage in the Sarah deck I was playing, and it was kind of helpful sometimes.
So guys, I ran a survey. It's still live. But we've got a few votes in right now. I'll throw it in chat. And I asked the question, are you happy that high Evo's play rate is as high as 35 to 40% of all games in specific segments of the ladder? I was trying to be nice. It's all of the ladder. So heck yeah, Hulk smash, or no, Evo is Luke cringe. I had to steal that from you, Nate. That made me laugh. low Evo and Luke cringe. And right now, by a margin of almost 2/3, people are happy with the state of the game. We're in the honeymoon. So let people cook. I'll say this: even if you start to sour on high Evo and its play rate stays excessively high, it's not our jobs to tell people what to play or not to play. I'm very much a proponent of not deck shaming. Deck shaming is really cringy. Even if I'm not happy about the rate of play, that's for the balance team to kind of figure out, and I'm glad I'm not them. I'm being honest right now.
Well,
Like,
and
we
they have
looked to
to.
armchair quarterback. I don't know what the solution is this time, but I
It's
think that they're going to need to do something.
Well, the
Probably.
tricky part is like I think basically the answer is if you want to adjust from where we are, you have to like adjust both Kitty and Wave. And Kitty, I think, is not that challenging to change because I think you can keep her mostly the same. You just lower the power output a bit, but you have her start at like not zero to make up for it. So you find like I think Hat was the one who I saw suggest this, and I think if Kitty ends up getting out of hand without Wave, it's probably like reasonable. And he was basically like, you make her a 1/2, but it's only +1, so you bake in 2 uses essentially from just
Okay.
playing the card, but you're no longer getting +2 every time. Um, and I think the main reason for that is because Kitty just, I think with especially in the bounce deck, she just gets such absurd power with Beast when you're playing and you're paying nothing for it. It's like it gets out of control really fast. But even when you're not, like even when you're just paying a mana for it every turn, it is a ton of power. It's basically just like the Hulk if you think about it. You float 1 mana, you're spending 1 mana, and you get +2 power, and that like really adds up. Like I don't think anyone thought Hulk was actually going to be like one of the best parts of High Evo. Like everyone thought it was going to be Abomination, and so far Hulk is much more of a standout. So
I've been seeing a lot of it, quite a bit of it. Yeah.
yeah, and that's been like one of
Hulk
my
is
favorite
insane.
things to do with it too. Is just you
Yeah.
slamming a big Hulk, which is cool. But the issue is like, all right, so if you change Kitty like that, because presumably you also have to change Wave. I have no idea how you can change Wave in a way that doesn't like functionally delete this card because you can't nerf the mana cost because if it costs 4, the card's just donezo. Like you can't ramp early anymore, or like it's just I don't know how you change it in a way where you stop it from like doing what it's doing to lock out these powerful decks. And maybe they just won't change it. I don't know, but it's like it's a card I have no idea how you can like change it. I mean, the only way people have talked about changing Wave in the past was basically what they did, which was removing the cost reduction stuff. I have no idea how else you can adjust this card to without like completely reinventing it, which I imagine they don't want to do, and probably a lot of people don't want them to
They've
do.
already reinvented it once.
Well, no, that was more of a modification to how it worked, right? Like the card stayed the same. It's just like they modified like how other stuff interacted with it. But like
Oh, yeah, okay. I was talking about Kitty Pride, but yes,
oh,
you're
I see,
talking
I
about
see.
Wave. Yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah, yeah.
could totally. Yeah, oh no, they could totally change the card. It's possible. I just think they wouldn't have done that with Kitty unless they literally had to, and I think it's gonna be the same with Wave. Like, I don't think they're gonna reinvent the card unless like there's no other option. And who knows? Maybe if Kitty Pride was less of like a premier threat, maybe less people would feel the need for Wave. But I'm not sure if that's necessarily true or not. It's kind of hard to say because
You know
Wave
what?
is good against the
Yeah,
other decks too.
when I'm playing a Kitty deck and the freaking Evo deck waves me, I'm just like,
Because you never know if they have it. That's the thing. Like I would wager most Evo decks are not running Wave. Like I haven't been a fan of it personally, but I'm sure if I was running into a lot of Kitty decks, it would be the thing I jump to. Because it just deals with those. And it's not just Kitty, right? Like you're also nailing the Sarah control decks. Like other decks get caught in the crossfire, which is like
bounce, bounce
convenient.
and Sarah control are collectively like less than 6%, which is kind of nuts when you think about it, because bounce before High Evo's release was like over 10. So I guess to your point, you're likely not gonna see them as frequently as the mirror. So if you were gonna play the nutty tech card, you would play Luke Cage. And my frustration with Luke Cage is like, that old joke in Hearthstone, like when does it actually become correct to play Eater of Secrets, which the meme is that it's never correct to play that card.
Mhm.
Well, it's the same thing here. It's correct to play Luke Cage reactively instead of proactively, because you'll see so much of it, which is why I snapped up that Max Greco hazmat in my shop tonight, so that I can maybe do the toxic Sarah thing or some other kind of proactive strategy with hazmat. I'll play the nutty like anti-meta deck, or I'll play the debris hazmat Luke Cage in my high evo. We'll call that the meta special. But
the new Cope Sarah, yeah. Oh god, I tried hazmat a few times and I hated it. I did not like, because one, a bunch of other people are running Luke Cage, so like that just makes
but you're
hazmat
running
terrible.
Enchantress, which could nuke your own Luke Cage.
Oh my god, I think it was on stream yesterday. I generated, so it was Triskelion, so it gave me a Luke Cage, and I played it. It was against a high Evo deck, and they rogued my Luke Cage, and I was like, all right, well, that's disappointing. And so I played my second one because I had the one in my deck, and they Enchantressed it.
Oh my, wow.
And I was just like, come on. Like, are we really? And those were both cards they were hard running. Like, I've seen people running the rogue because they're like, screw it. Instead of running Luke Cage, I'll just take other people's Luke Cage and then hit other stuff at the same time. And it's literally
Eater of
it's just the
Secrets
Super
meta.
Scroll thing all over again.
Yeah.
When Patriot was really popular and Darkhawk was really popular, Super Scroll popped up.
It's like those Looney Tune cartoons, like where Yosemite Sam pulls a gun on
Duck
Bugs Bunny, and then
Rabbit
Bugs Bunny
season,
pulls out
Duck season, Rabbit
pulls
season.
out a bigger gun, and then he pulls out a bigger, like I pull out the Super Scroll, then you pull out the Rogue. It just keeps escalating until something breaks the logjam, and I don't like those kind of metas. I don't know. We'll see. I think people are going to continue to have their fun. The real test will be post reset. So reset's going to be on the 5th, so in a week and a day. This is a 5-week season, which is always nice because it feels like we get a little bit more of our money's worth out of our battle pass.
Yes, I'm glad. I'm glad to have a little bit of I don't know, it's just a little bit of a reprieve, yeah, and a little bit of extra time as well.
But I think post reset, that dynamic, like when we see people get frustrated when there's like a reason to not snap, and I think snapping against Evo decks is going to be very challenging, and so you're going to see that like bottlenecking and.
Well, yeah, that's the problem we saw with the Thanos and the Shuri metas, right? I think that's one of the more frustrating things is when it becomes not as clear when you're supposed to snap or not. It makes the climb a lot worse because you do it a lot slower.
Yeah,
and it makes the losses feel a lot worse because it feels like you're getting set back more. And when you're in like a polarized meta where it's like, oh, I'm on a kitty deck and I'm doing great, but I lose to like one card, it makes you hesitant to ever really snap with it. So yeah, as long as that's a thing, it's gonna definitely limit some of the decks. I'm trying to think if I feel like I haven't felt that way as much with the high Evo decks themselves. I guess the one tricky part though is like much like old Zabu stuff. You don't know what you're playing against until like later on in the game if you see like a high Evo card, because it could be like a lot of different versions of decks. Like it could be one that tries to do the Moon Girl stuff, or it could just be all the Evo cards or some of the Evo cards. It's kind of hard to tell at first what you're really.
And at Infinite, we don't care about snapping as much, or like, I mean,
well, I'm trying to break that habit for the Conquest mode. I've been trying to do more of it because I want to get in the habit of snapping and retreating better for when it's actually going to. Obviously, it's a little different in battle mode, but
so yeah, it's a whole new game, and like I feel like first it was the change to wave that changed the entire meta on its head, and now again with the release of High Evo, and I don't see, maybe it goes from 40% to 30%, even at 20%. They're talking about nerfing Galactus as almost a certainty with a play rate of between 7 and 14%, depending on where you are in ladder. So I think that if it stays really high, they're going to feel compelled to do something, which is interesting because does play rate necessitate balance changes? It would seem as though they believe it does.
I think it's one of their factors. Like, I think basically someone asked them about this a while back, and they were just like, we have like 2 or 3 or however many like different angles we look at. So presumably like win rate, cube rate, and maybe another thing.
It can't be solely play rate because America Chavez or you name the card, right? It's got to be the win rate or the cube rate or whatever on top of it. I do think that there's some sentiment with Galactus, right? We've seen very frequently people just getting angry at the card, and even if it's just all right, take your 1 cube and get out of here. But like people get very emotional about it, and so there's a little bit of a feels bad factor, I think, there as well.
Yeah, well, people don't like how it like fundamentally changes the dynamic of like I'm playing for 3 lanes versus playing
it's a
for
big
1.
bad. I mean, welcome to the club. High Evo and Kang and whatever. I mean, that's
that's kind of what they're supposed to do. Yeah.
All right, guys. They came up with the nutty solution. It'll only destroy 1 lane instead of 2.
Oh man, I can't.
Oh god,
if they actually did that.
Then they need to give me my 6,000 tokens back.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like that,
no
they're
refunds,
not going
Nate.
to want to delete like a card from the game, and they've made that. I think they made that pretty clear overall.
Yeah, just like that. Oh, I'm crying. Just gonna go cry. Sorry.
I don't think whatever they do, I doubt they'll do that because that would delete the cards. So we'll see what happens. But like I said, Galactus could be a way of keeping the meta in check right now. It's goes from being the villain to the hero. Maybe we'll see. I'm
Spider-Man is the problem. Honestly, it's not in my opinion anyway. Is that Spider-Man is the
I do think people
issue,
would hate it a lot less without Spider-Man. That's probably true. I think that is one of the things that drives a lot of people's hatred.
So interesting fact: Spider-Man is one of the best cards in the high Evo deck. Maybe Spider-Man's gonna take a hit, but like, will it take a hit in the month where it gets his cool variants and has its day in the sun? Right, Spider Month.
Spider-Man's always been toxic. Let's be real. It's just he wasn't played for a very long time, and then we got to see like full toxicity with double Spider-Man.
Yeah, double Spider-Man was
was super toxic.
Single Spider-Man was okay.
A lot of people hate the lane lock stuff. I enjoy it, but I know there are a lot of people who do not enjoy.
I have fallen in love with it. It is so fun.
It's very fun. I kind of want to try the version that you ended up climbing with Nate again. I haven't played it since the new card came out, and like
I have, and it's okay, but the high
manageable.
The high Evo stuff like is just very.
It's bad against the stone. Or it's like good for them against the stones.
Yeah, you kind of go wide at your own peril. Maybe you can slip Luke Cage in there or something, and just
barf. Yeah, no, I don't know. You probably have to. You probably have to because when you're locking stuff down, like you can't. The whole point of locking it down is that then you need it to grow on the side while no one can touch it, or you
maybe
have
like
a
Killmonger and nuke your stones then.
Well, I'm really anxious to try actually this high Evo version of this control version. I have not seen it. I'll have to get the deck list from you, but I'm really interested to try that because I've been really enjoying the lane lock.
It's like topping the lane lock one has been the one topping the charts. I tried out one version of it that was a bit more in on the high Evo stuff, but like there are a lot of different versions.
I don't know. I may take a look at kind of the top few builds and then homebrew my own. We'll talk about it whenever is appropriate, but I hit infinite with the lane lock deck.
Maybe now would be a good chance to pivot to our deck. So why don't you pull it up and
Yeah, okay. So this is Zombies deck. We talked about it last time, and I got it from Zombies because I was really enjoying the lane control style deck, and I wasn't settled on the build. And Zombies like, oh, I've been playing this. This is a little different. It's lane control, but with Thanos. And so you've got all the stones, and the stones are super useful for cycling. You draw all your stuff, and it was really interesting. Like I had to really change my pattern of thinking for this deck because you can't, like, a lot of times in the lane control you need to pick like 2 lanes and lock them down, and the other one you just let it go. But this I mean, you end up doing that, but you have to spread your stones across like all 3 lanes. Like you don't want to clog up one of the lanes with all the stones. It's just not good. And so learning the intricacies of how these work is really, really an interesting and fun deck. I never thought that I would be playing freaking Star-Lord in a deck, and it's actually surprisingly good. I mean, you could swap it for something else, but like
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so I've been playing a version of this on my kid's free-to-play account just to try to kind of grind and stuff, and he doesn't have Thanos, but he has basically the rest of it, not Jeff either, but the rest of it, and it's like, oh, yeah, it's pretty good. I pulled out Devil Dino because it's not really as good without all the stones, but
yeah, you kind of need Thanos for the Dino.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. This like you storm and then you either jug to like pop them out of it, or you storm and Drax or storm, and one of the you think they're going to play into it, so your Guardians cards really pay off there. Sticking a Nebula in a storm lane is great because nobody can touch it, minus a Killmonger or something.
Yeah, I love the Thanos Storm deck was like the only thing I've been playing for like the past 2 weeks for the most part. It's probably still really fun, and I bet it still works.
It does, but it really hurts against the cards like Cyclops and High Evo that are constantly giving your stones like minus.
So what you want to do is you want to take out the Thanos package and put in a High Evo package, and then keep the rest of the shell the same. No, I'm serious. Maybe
I mean,
do that.
you probably
honestly, you probably just take out Star-Lord for Luke Cage and you call it a day. That's like looking at.
But then you have to draw freaking Luke Cage in a.
I know it's not as good.
Deck.
But if you're playing like a ton, if you're playing enough high evo where it's constantly an issue, it's probably just what I would do. Because like you'll beat them most of the thing with these high evo decks is they're not actually that good at winning a storm lane. Most of the time they're playing a Cyclops there, so they can blast you with it a few turns, or they play like the Thing. And if neither of those things affect you, like they're never gonna win your storm lane for the most part. Most just don't run. I mean, some you have to be aware of Doom, but like even then, we're able to just put a bunch of stones in, and I'll have to try it out and see how it goes and whatnot. Well, you can just Luke Cage into your storm lane too. You can protect it there.
Right.
You can save it. Well, you probably don't want to save it to the end in high or in lane control. But the tricky part, right, is like now there's like a big Hulk going around. So, I think
this version has no
Shang-Chi,
Shang-Chi, right? So it's like, oh, you gotta be careful.
Yeah, you might not need it because the whole idea is like if we can just storm one lane and Spider-Man or Professor X the other, we don't need to win another lane at the end of the game. So it might be good against. Whereas the high Evo versions, they're basically running Storm and Spider-Man, but you should not run Professor X in a high Evo lockdown because you want to be playing off curve most of the time, and X is a lot worse than Spider-Man in that situation. Because though it's more permanent, one, you can get Jeff getting around it. Two, you're playing on curve, which you don't want to be doing. Spider-Man lets you float. It's just not. I tried it. I did not like X.
The top, a lot of people are still playing it though.
I'm sure.
The top 2 high Evo lane control decks are still running it, but
it just felt really bad to me. It felt really off.
Well, KM cut it, and a bunch of other players that
like
are
a lot of the
play
people
group cut it.
Who I would say have a good handle on the game have been cutting it, and I see why. At least in Thanos, it makes a bit more sense.
So here's what's terrifying.
That's nice.
There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 high Evo lane control decks between 80 and Infinite Plus, sporting over 200 games with a 60% plus win rate running Professor X. So what's going to happen when when the cooking optimizes it further?
Yeah, well, I think
we're looking pretty good.
Like, I think the high Evo lane control deck is probably good into a lot of the other high Evo decks, and I think that's why it's doing so well, is because, like, you're doing the powerful things that the high Evo deck does, but you're also limiting where they can play, and that's kind of what you want to do.
good into spam decks without having to play wave.
Yeah, it helps. This is another answer to Kitty, right? Like if you're winning 2 lockdown lanes on turn at the end of turn 5, who cares if they
It's
play like a
also
10
good
power Kitty?
into Galactus if you can't Galactus.
Oh,
Oh yeah, this deck
deck,
is great into
it
Galactus.
it just eats Galactus alive. Now you have to be able to kind of anticipate where they're going to play it, and that's not always easy.
Yeah.
But even
You
then,
have
it's like,
Chug, you have Spider-Man, you have Professor X, like all
Yeah.
these things just destroy
I
Galactus.
think we got ourselves our next meta boogeyman.
yeah, I kind of think so. The budget version. So I hit Infinite with this. I don't know, a week ago or whenever it was, last weekend, and it was super fun. The budget version of this, basically on my kid's account, no Jeff, no Thanos, and so we pulled out Devil Dino. Basically, I in the 2 slot, I stuck in Daredevil because it really helps with Professor X. At the top end in the 6 slot, I put in Doctor Doom because he just got it, and it helps with like the storm lanes, right?
Yeah, Doom is in the non-Thanos version. Doom is really good.
But outside of that, and then I think in the Devil Dino slot, in that slot, I put in Spider Woman because
Yeah, you just want something you can go tall with. So Spider Woman's good because it goes tall, but it dodges Shang-Chi.
Yeah, she goes tall, she dodges Shang, she makes their stuff like what I've seen people do, and again, this is on a free to play account, relatively low elo, but people will like fill up the lane with a relatively high power, and it's like, cool, I'm gonna add 8 and -4 on them. Like it's a pretty good card. So, but yeah, well, it's really good. It's really fun. Been enjoying it quite a bit, and yeah, I'm sold on it. So I'll be experimenting with the high Evo lane control.
Basically, you just try and steal at least one. You try and steal at least one lane with Storm or Spider-Man, and then you just get your Hulk to steal another lane. Is how it works in that deck. And it works pretty good because the Hulk is kind of like the Infinite with the less bad condition, and you have all this support. That's the tricky thing about it, because like I'm not saying they are or should nerf high evo, but if they were going to, like, I have absolutely no idea how they do it, because it's not like there's like one high evo card that's like making it really good. It's the fact that all the pieces kind of work together. So it's kind of tricky, though. I would not be surprised if at some point in time, whether it be soon or not soon at all, I wouldn't be shocked if any of the high evo cards got changed. The Hulk would probably be the least surprising, because the power output is really, really nuts. I'm not saying they need to, but it would surprise me the least.
Yeah,
If that's one that gets adjusted in some way in the future. But for the time being, I've been liking being able to slam the Hulk. I'm getting value out of my Pixel Hulk, and I am
oh my
enjoying
god,
it.
the number of 20 attack Hulks that I've seen over the past few days is like astonishing. I could see them giving it +1 instead of +2. But
that would be such a.
I know. I don't want to speculate. It's too early. Let's look at these other decks. I don't want to keep us here all night. But
Yeah,
it's really fun. And
yeah, we foreshadowed this one before. Zombies mentioned it, but this is a really interesting kind of brew, in that it just took 2 well-performing concepts and married them.
Yeah. I played this yesterday on stream, and it did really well. We got actually have it up. Let's see. It was 37 and 16. It's a 69% win ratio. Very nice. 53 53 total games, just under 70%. 35 cubes. I wasn't trying the hardest for cubes, but I was being a little mindful of the snapping. So average 0.66 cubes. It's just a really solid deck. I mean, we've seen this a bunch of times where it's like, oh, you put the Darkhawk shell and another good shell together, and you have a good deck. And this is kind of just another example of that.
Yep.
You don't even really like the high evo isn't like particularly insane in this deck. I think I'm more just playing it because I think the cards are neat, rather than the fact that they're like the best version of Darkhawk. Maybe it is, I don't know. It certainly felt pretty good, but I'm sure the other versions of Darkhawk probably also feel pretty good. You might notice no Luke Cage here. That was the tough decision I had to make with Jeff, and so far Jeff has been paying off.
The correct decision,
Yeah, if you don't want to be
in my opinion.
XW. I do say Luke Cage is not the worst in terms of like if you don't have Jeff, you're looking for like a budget 2-drop and you're seeing a lot of high Evo, I'd probably just slam him in there. But Jeff is really good because of his flexibility to move around. It makes him a lot better into these wave decks, so we can kind of shift our power. We have Doom ourselves, so like if we're ahead, and they like wave us, a lot of times they're gonna follow that up with Doom, and if we just do our own Doom and we're ahead, we stay ahead and we win. So that's been pretty good. It beat a lot of Doom decks with this. And this is more playing the game of like, oh, you're gonna slam a big Hulk, well, I'm just gonna blow it up. Like I'm just gonna Shang-Chi it. We get to run Iron Lad because they're a bunch of decent high rolls. It's basically just a good Zabu deck. The high Evo gave us another good 4-drop in the thing. Cyclops is kind of nice, but we actually don't float a ton with this deck. You only proc him usually once or twice, but it's still impactful because if you proc him twice, he's a 3/8, and that's really good. And worst case, you proc him once, he's a 3/6, which is just okay. I mean, nothing great, but it's all right. Shocker's kind of cool because everyone hates Shocker. Like he's the I think the least liked of the bunch of the high Evo cards, but he's really not that bad. And he's particularly good in this deck because you have 6 4-drops in your deck. Half your deck is 4-drops. And the whole point of the Zabu deck is you're trying to play your 4-drops early. So if we don't draw Zabu and we draw Shocker instead, a lot of the time it hits our left card. Our left card's a 4-drop because if our left card is a 1-drop or a 2-drop, we're usually playing it. And then we can just play a 4-drop on 3 and curve out how you want to for a Zabu deck. So that's been really strong, actually. It feels like it makes Zabu a bit more consistent in terms of like not having a terrible curve. And then you can justify running Iron Lad because we have a critical mass of good cards to copy. Obviously, your high rolls are going to be like Doom or Darkhawk or Rock Slide. But hey, if you hit Cyclops or the Thing, like doubling up with 2 Cyclopses in a lane is pretty gross with the Iron Lad. It's just neat. You get the disruption from the rocks. Jeff gives you flexibility. It's just a really solid like mid-range deck, which has been the case for Darkhawk for like forever. I know a lot of people are like, how have they left Darkhawk alone for so long? But the funny thing is, and I think a bunch of people were confused when they saw Stature and Black Bolt get hit before like Hawk, and they're like, well, that was a Hawk deck, so why are you nerfing around him? And the flat out answer, and I think most people don't feel this way, but it seems to be true from data and from what like the team at Second Dinner has said, is in the Black Bolt Stature stuff, the number 1 and number 2 win rate cards were Black Bolt and Stature. Darkhawk was a good card in that deck, but Darkhawk has never been the thing that was making it as top tier as it was. And I think this is like a feels thing too. I think people feel worse losing to Darkhawk because of the rocks and stuff, rather than like how much it actually impacts you. Whereas I think most of the time Black Bolt was discarding something not always very impactful, and Stature. People just didn't dislike those cards as much as I think a bunch of other cards. That's why so many people were surprised when it got changed. Because I think even though it was the best deck, it was also a little bit of a boring deck, and so I think we saw that post Infinite. Like very few people played it. Because I just don't think anyone was like. I mean, I'm sure there were some people who really liked it, but that's how I kind of felt. It just wasn't the most fun to me. Like once I played it for a while, I feel like I'd done everything to do with the deck, and so. But it was still like the best deck, and I think Darkhawk on his own, while he's really good, he isn't putting up those same numbers that we were seeing with like the other deck.
And now no one's playing it.
Yeah, and it's still probably good.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the thing. I'm like,
it
I should
wasn't
try
losing
it.
by 2 points of power. Like obviously into wave stuff it'll still be worse, but like not everyone's on a wave deck either. It's not even though those are like the pillars, it's not just Kitty and Wave. Like you do see other decks, namely a lot of high Evo stuff. And this felt pretty good into a lot of the high Evo decks without having to lean on it as heavily. Like Luke Cage doesn't really counter you super hard with this deck. What do you mean Black Bolt was winning the game? Black Bolt had the highest played win rate in the game for like
Drawn.
what, like a drawn win rate for what, like a month,
Yeah.
like a month and a half. It
Although
was a long
its
time.
played win rate was really high too, but
It
generally we look at the
was
draw win rate.
ridiculous, and like nobody, even though it was like regarded as a really strong thing, like nobody, I don't think people realized just like the ridiculous stats it was putting up. Because I don't think people felt that bad losing to it, weirdly. I mean, maybe if it discards like a key card, but most of the time, your key cards going into turn 6 are not cheap. So, like, yeah, I nailed like a surfer once, and that was funny. But like most of the time, a lot of times you were discarding a rock because they drew a rock from your Korg or your rock slide. It was really just about enabling Stature. But it also, obviously, the deck took a hit with the wave change, but it sounds like it was still putting up very impressive results post wave change. Now, I don't know if that's because not everybody was like running wave stuff, or if it just did kind of all right leading up into the wave turn. Because those decks ran Doom too, right? So if you get ahead on turn 5 and then you just play Doom, I mean, a lot of the times those wave decks, Doom is the best thing they're playing. I mean, I guess you have some with the high Evo Hulk now.
Well, I have been experimenting with some Evo decks. Namely, I started with Lockjaw Thanos, and I quickly realized that the stones are a liability. Sadly, the deck is just not good in the context of the current meta. That could change, but for now, not so much. Zombies had a run with just good old fashioned Jane Jaw.
Oh, yeah.
And I took it for a spin, and I ran it without Jeff as pictured on the screen, and with Doctor Doom. I then took Doc, and so I don't think you were running it with Dracula. I think that the deck is really inconsistent, and I've been thinking about what would make it more consistent, and I'm not too sure that that's possible. I think the biggest problem is the fact that it's really hard to get a good drop off Dracula. When you do, it feels great, but like I think that if you're gonna run Dracula, you just cut the Jeff and you just put in Giganto or something stupid. Otherwise, you take out Dracula and you try and just consistently gut through your Thor Jubilee turn and try and do something nuts on the high end. I don't know what the answer is. I actually just don't think this is that great, because the more consistent lane lock and just straight up decks just kind of, they just get over you unless you Giga High Roll, and your Giga High Roll is usually anchored, like it's really telegraphed where you're going to try and high roll into, which is your Lockjaw lane and your Dracula lane. Still, I mean, some people are doing okay with it. It seems really popular on ladder, and I think that people are just trying to see like what high Evo decks would work. I think that honestly, like unironically, like the best thing would be to cut the Jeff and just throw in Giganto and just be like, I'm all in on the Drac. Because then like you only have one bad drop into Drac on your last turn, which is like high Evo.
Yeah.
So you'll have this situation where you have like Chavez, High Evo, and Infinite, and it's like, well, maybe if one of those cards is Giganto instead of the other, then you'll have a better shot at it. But Hulk is nasty. If you can get Hulk out early, he's insane. You skip a lot of turns early on, so he's usually 20 power, just out of control. I don't know. I'll probably put this to bed. I don't really feel like taking this to ladder with Giganto. It just doesn't feel good enough. But
I just put it back to the original version. Like, I think Dracula is neat, and it does help you a little bit against like the Shang-Chi decks. But like you said, there are misses, right? Like if you're sitting on like a Jubilee or a high Evo in hand, that Dracula can be really bad. I saw people have success with it, so I did want to try it. But I can definitely see like we don't have like the craziest big stuff. We obviously have Hulk and Infinite, which are the two big things, but everything else is like either like medium sized or small. Because like if some games you don't get the Thor in time, so it's just sitting in your hand.
yeah,
So I kind of like the version I played originally, which is basically just Sunspot in the Jeff spot, and what did I have in the? I can't remember
Doom.
what I had. Doom.
You play Doom?
Yeah, I played Doom because Doom makes Odin a bit better too. Because right now Odin is really just hitting like your hammer. Or
Yeah,
your
I was going to ask
Jubilee.
about that.
It's
There's not a lot of
so-
Odin triggers, but
Wasp is your biggest one. Wasp and Thor or Mjolnir. Those are the ones that you really. That
Yeah.
Oh, the new
The
Wasp.
Thor
Yeah,
hammer's
yeah.
the big one, and then Jubilee, it enables a high roll, right? Where if Jubilee pulls Odin, she pulls another card too, and then you usually just win that lane. So
You're
that's
gonna
kind of why I
be.
like it.
Everyone says that Doom and Odin, but like the odds of you Odining Doom are so low. The only way that happens is if you pull Doom off Jubilee, which is like.
Or out of your lockjaw lane.
Yeah, I suppose. But if you've got a good lockjaw going, you pretty much like.
Yeah. The thing I like about Doom is it can catch those. Sometimes it catches people off guard because they think you're just going to play for 2 lanes because that's how this deck normally functions. You do a lockjaw lane and then you play a big thing somewhere else. And so sometimes surprising them or getting ahead with like Doom early off the lockjaw ends up being rather good. I don't think you need it for this deck. And with Dracula, it gets worse, right? Like, because it's another bad card for the Dracula. But I think
Don't think it's good enough even without the Drac. But I agree with you. You either have to lean into the Drac completely or just cut it completely. But the problem is that if you cut it completely, you're losing such a vector of projecting power that you're just not going to be able to compete
it
against
could
the
be
other decks.
wave too. Like I think this deck could probably benefit from wave, especially if the kitty stuff comes back more. Like you just put wave in this deck because you can wave out a big thing. You can wave out an Odin and then continue to like lock them down. And we've seen that be, one of the powerful things like Thanos does. And you could do that here and wait like
Cut
it just
cut
seems such a good inclusion.
cut Dracula for wave. Well, that's interesting.
Hmm.
Think about that. Also, running high Evo in this deck sucks. Like I mean, like you're getting
He's
the
a
big
little
Hulk, you're getting the
awkward.
Wasp, but
Sometimes
like
you just toss him though. I've tossed him a few times into the jaw and it was okay.
it's so bad. He's so bad.
Yeah, he's kind of like he's the bad thing you play to get your second Infinite and make Wasp better. It's like the trade-off because Wasp is so nice in the if they put anything in your lockjaw lane, they're just like they don't even have a chance to fight for it a lot of
Well,
the
you know what they
time.
do though? They'll throw Cyclops in the lockjaw lane, and that really makes it more of a horse race than you might think. It's really annoying. So it's
Oh
like.
yeah, it can.
Yeah,
It can make
so
it
because
tricky,
the
so that
thing is
helps.
that like because Lockjaw's not really a big boy, so like it if they play Cyclops and then like Hulk in there, like you could easily lose that lane. So like again, like it feels like you're just disadvantaged into the mirror. And as far as point slam goes, without wave, you're struggling against um other decks like the Kitty Pride decks. So King Joffrey says Cyclops is overrated. Perhaps it might be, but when you're playing into decks that telegraph their lanes like this one, it does work because you put Cyclops in the lane that
It's
will
efficient power for the cost,
yeah.
basically. Like
So you want to
you
be.
pay 1 mana for it at the very least two power in a lane, and it's good. It's
That's why I wanted Drac too, because Drac doesn't care if he gets subtracted because it just
you just
overwrites whatever
change,
number is in
yeah,
there. So
changes it.
it's like I don't know. It just felt kind of bleh. People are playing it though, and if it's good, they'll continue to play it. The data suggests that it's pretty mid. I think that probably Dracula needs to go because with high Evo in your hand, it's gonna feel bad to ditch high Evo into Dracula.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
maybe a regular lockjaw deck is okay, but I don't know. This one.
I hard cast the Infinite a few times with this deck too, because you end up if you get your jaw out, you end up being decently ahead in that lane, and then a lot of times you'll get the Wasp back or you'll get the Hammer, and then so you can skip 5, and that's one of the reasons
Yeah.
that I like Sunspot in the deck. Was because if it's not a Sunspot game, you just have a cheap thing to throw into the jaw, and if it is a Sunspot game, you get a benefit from pumping with it. You're naturally trying to pump with it for the Hulk anyway, but there were a few times I got people with the Infinite because I just went like Wasp Hammer or just Wasp Infinite on the final turn, and it was kind of enough. People don't expect the 20 power all the time.
Yeah, the Infinite was fine. It wasn't. I have no qualms with it.
And then
Although,
you know what the big thing about the Infinite is? It also does something which I think is really important right now. It makes it so they can't just slam a Hulk and win that lane. Because if you only have like, I don't know, like a Chavez or an Odin or a Jane or whatever, it's a decent bit of power, but they can overpower you rolling like, another 8 power or 9 power. But if you pull out an Infinite, like they have to actually commit stuff to that lane, and then they'd have to commit a Hulk on top of it, and that's not how like the high Evo deck can't afford to do that usually. Like it tries to put all its power into one lane, and then you slam a Hulk in another lane and just win with the Hulk. But the Infinite basically says like you're not going to win one lane if it pops out of the jaw, and then it usually I found this deck it just floats so easily. There occasionally are times you want to play on curve and whatnot, like jaw and sometimes Thor, not always, but sometimes. But a lot of time you play off curve and you don't really mind because the payoff you get for if you get the Hulk is like crazy.
So, not being such a huge fan of High Evo, I've been trying to figure out what would be good into it, and really I've only come up with one answer, and that's the next deck. It's just your run-of-the-mill control Sarah deck, but it's my best performing deck. This is the stock list. I'm running Jeff and Zabu. You can run whatever you want in those two slots. You could run Scarlet Witch and Sentinel. You could run Lizard if you wanted. I like Zabu because it makes your 4-drops cheap. Yeah, there's only 2, but having a 2-drop Enchantress or Shang-Chi was good. But again, other choices are fine. Scarlet Witch actually may be really good if we see Storm becoming increasingly popular, because then like if the lane lock decks are only playing Storm and Spider-Man as they cut X, then it kind of just neutralizes that on the spot and puts a big wrinkle into their game plan. So that would be a good consideration. The stats that I have on this are really good. So just kind of looking at my my overall stat, I've been playing a lot of this. So I'm 185.
Wow, nice. All right.
With 66 cubes gained. And a 53.5% win rate. So a little on the low side for the win rate, but the cube equity is high. And I'll be honest, I had a few bad sessions, and I had a few sessions where I didn't play optimally. So I'm sure if I was really tryharding to get good stats, I could have probably upped that win rate a little bit. But I think that they're still good enough that it warrants consideration. Killmonger, no one's respecting Killmonger. So
Nobody.
people are playing Sunspot or Nebula. Generally you can almost, they know you're running Killmonger, so you don't even have to like put any pretense into it. Just let their Nebula grow, give them confidence. You can play your things in other lanes. You don't have to play around it. Kitty Pryde is gross. It oftentimes will be 8 or 10. And like in certain situations where there's like a Shuri's lab or cloning vats, like things get out of hand. I outscaled a Hulk on Shuri's lab. They had like a 38 Hulk. I'll give you the screenshot. You can throw it up there, Nate, if it's not too much trouble. Or I got Kitty Pryde to like over 60, and they just pieced out. So I think this is a really good deck. Of course, I've played against some Evo decks that run Wave, and then that just completely neutralizes you. Also, this deck doesn't really have a good game plan into Galactus other than Shang-Chi. So it's tough. But yeah, as a non-Evo deck, this is the only one that I felt was good. And I think with Scarlet Witch, it could be even better. You probably run that instead of Zabu. I like Jeff. Jeff is not included in a lot of these, but like with Spider-Man being a thing, it oftentimes just lets you get over or under. There's Kitty 62.
Yep.
And their Hulk at 28. There's a bit of shuffling going on there, but and they actually waived me, and it didn't matter. It's funny. This was a bit of an odd game, but they waived early. I don't really know what they were thinking. They probably were thinking, oh crap, he's playing Kitty Pryde into Shuri's Lab and I'm screwed. Also, funny thing here, the Black Widow. So, oh yeah, what happened was he played Wave, and then Black Widow came out of the X Mansion. He got
So they denied their own
She-Hulk.
draw.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't think that really changed a whole lot. It was funny. He threw the bite into Lockjaw after, so it wasn't a huge deal, but it was just like, this is like a typical game, when you have the advantage. I mean, playing Kitty with Angela is a real good scale.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's huge.
Kitty's
And
just really, really good.
people say this often, and it's true. If you think they're going to wave you or Sandman you, then you can play like Mysterio, Monkey, and something else on
you just
5,
go
or even
off
just
on
Mysterio
5.
and Monkey on 4. But that's really hard to do right now because, frankly, you're not going to know. And you're better off not assuming, because you will need that extra scale to get over the top if your game goes to turn 6.
I think
Most
if you
people are
see
not running.
Thanos, you can kind of assume reasonably, because I think all the Thanos ones run Wave, but the base high Evo stuff,
I haven't
it's
seen
kind of up
much.
in the air.
I haven't seen much Thanos anymore at all. I think most
No, I
people
don't
gave
think
up on that.
there's still a few people doing it, but it's not as common. But I think if you see Thanos Lockjaw, definitely expect the Wave, because
Yeah.
I don't think there's
Yeah.
anyone playing that without that. But high Evo decks, I think for the most part, at least from my experience, they aren't running it yet. But they definitely
I
could,
mean,
depending on what happens.
this is all still very much in flux, right? The card's only been out for less than a week, and so it's like,
Yeah, it's been
well,
like a few days. It came out Wednesday? Thursday?
Thursday.
yeah.
Thursday.
So
Feels like a lifetime already.
Yeah, it does feel like it's been longer than it has uh, since the release. And that's
so
after it got delayed, right, with the unexpected bug. But at least they were able to fix it relatively quickly. And
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
there's still potential that somebody, you know, will find like, well, what I mean to say is it's going to continue to get refined more and more, right?
yeah, and then we also still, I think it's a big question mark too, because so many people are playing high Evo. We aren't getting a feel for how some of these other decks that were successful before are doing. Like, how is that 1% of people playing the Black Bolt Stature deck?
Well,
How are they doing?
they're
Like,
doing really well. They're doing better than it's, as much as we whine about this trifecta. Like, they're cruising with the highest cube rate and the highest win rate. So we'll see if people pick up on that. Just going back to the Sarah deck, now that I've kind of talked through it, play Scarlet Witch right now. Between Storm, Magic, and
yeah, it seems good.
yeah, I'd play
Oh,
that.
it messes you up real bad when you go to storm the lane and they Scarlet Witch it, and it's like, my plan is ruined. So yes, I can't confirm.
Yeah,
The only thing
it
High
seems screwed.
Evo has achieved is countering decks that can put down average numbers. I think that is a hot take. That I think the deck is performing very well. The good builds are performing well, and I think that's what we're going to see change over the next couple days. Right, there are a lot of mid builds. You want to talk about a mid build? I showed one with Lockjaw there. Don't play that. Good builds are like the control ones, or I suspect you'll see other brews like Zombies deck get refined as well that put up good numbers. They're doing work. I
I'm
think
surprised people aren't trying out the Hawk version, but it may be just, people who played a lot of Hawk. Because I hadn't played Hawk in like a few weeks because I've just been playing the lane control stuff. So I was like, all right,
yeah.
well, time to return to old reliable. And I think the biggest thing about the high Evo decks is it's really the Hulk. Like the rest of the cards are decent and whatnot, but Hulk is their big payoff and Hulk is their big power play. And
Yeah.
the big thing with it is it just wins you. It can win you a game, or it can win you a lane that you are previously very behind on in a way that was hard to do before the Hulk. Because if
And that's
someone's
why, yeah.
ahead by like 9, or if someone's ahead by just a decently large number, you usually either you're saying, all right, well, I'll either counter that lane with a Shang or Enchantress or whatever, or I'm giving up on it. And now Hulk is just like, well, I can just outpower it unless they also. It kind of forces people to overcommit to their own lane if they don't want to get blown out by the Hulk. And that's why I think the most powerful thing High Evo is doing. I think it does other powerful stuff, but the whole reason it's so powerful is because those other powerful things are giving you more reason to fuel your Hulk. Like Cyclops on his own is probably just an okay card, but the fact that it's giving you two
Feels
power
fun.
for one energy on Cyclops, and then it's giving you another two power for that same one energy, so that's doubling what you're getting out of the Cyclops,
That's
right?
probably why the lane lock is putting up the best numbers, because to your point, you lock a lane, you win that one through a scam, and then now all you got to do is win one lane. You got Big Daddy Smash, who's gonna just do it single-handedly, right? And
That's
you
just been
know,
my experience with it, and
yeah,
like I gravitated towards the Hulk initially, and it was successful for me because you just stack a lane, and then you win another lane with the Hulk, and that's why lane lock is working, is because they lock a lane and then they win another lane with the Hulk or their other lane lock thing, and it's good into it's basically the just like Wave, it's the counter versus Kitty, right? So you hit all of those decks, you like hit the Sarah decks and the Crossfire a lot of time because you can't vomit your cards. Like you saw a few times playing the Sarah deck, it's really annoying running into the lane lock decks because like we need the space for the Mysterio stuff to work, and
yeah.
Jeff helps a bit and whatnot. It's definitely
Yeah, that's why you
interesting.
gotta play Scarlet Witch. I think like things are kind of before it was kind of open ended, and it was like, well, whatever, you can kind of put whatever you want in there. But I think that yeah, you definitely want
Yeah,
Scarlet
she's
Witch.
probably very good right now as long as the lane lock version stays popular, and given that Cam put out that list today, I would imagine it is going to be fairly popular and people are going to try and refine it more and whatnot. And I think it's going to lead to more Killmonger coming back, so maybe this leads to more Sarah, which will then lead to more Wave, and we'll continue the cycle.
Yeah. Cue the Circle of Life
Mhm.
song. So, yep, that's how it goes.
It's interesting. We'll see. The real question mark is how much do the June cards impact any of this? And
Well, we'll see. I saw the two locations that are coming out in June with the Spider-Man cards, and like they're like it looks like they're really trying to push that move archetype.
yes,
But
and also think about this: you can ham people's Hulks. And that
yeah,
doesn't that's not a euphemism. It's just you're going to be able to turn a Hulk into a regular old Hulk instead of this evolved powerhouse. And I don't know,
People
maybe
are
Spider Ham's
going
the savior we need.
people are gonna play Spider Ham, whether Spider Ham is good or bad. It's
Oh
gonna be
yeah.
one of those cards.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that'll change things up, I'm sure. Um,
It'll be
Yikes.
for the decks that are leaning on the Hulk a lot right now to finish the game. I do think that card will actually be ridiculously annoying against those style of decks. Like,
I can't imagine
because
Galactus would be too fond of it either.
no,
Mm-mm.
Galactus will not be fond of it, except they get off a little bit easier because unless they're doing it late in the game, there's a decent chance they hit your death instead, and you can get by without the death. But if it hits your Null or your Galactus, obviously you're not having a good time. But I think it's going to be kind of a powerful tech card versus some of the stuff, even against Doom, right? Like Doom is kind of taken over as the premier six drop a lot of decks want to play in part because of like Iron Lad. It's a really big high roll off of it. It's good against the lane lock. It just spreads your power out, which is good because you don't have to overcommit to a lane. And when a lot of decks are, punishing you for doing that with like the Hulk and the other stuff, Doom just makes a lot of sense. So the fact that Spider Ham's gonna be blasting Doom into a 6/5, that's probably pretty good too. I'm interested to see what happens with the move stuff. I don't know if it will be good enough or not, but I do think there are powerful cards in the archetype. Like Silk seems great for Sarah. It's another essentially on the final turn. It's a 1/5 if you throw a priority, and we've seen how good 1/5s are in Sarah. Uh, Pre-nerf Mysterio, anybody? So that's pretty good. And then the 2099, I think, is the big question mark of it looks powerful. Destroying an opponent's card is strong. And
but
the
it
deck
only
wants
does
to
it.
move. It
It
only does it
only
once per lane.
It only does it, yeah. And so when it's nuking rocks or squirrels or something, it's gonna feel
Oh
bad.
yeah,
But
if there's a lot of junk around, it's going to be terrible. But right now, we're not seeing quite as much of that, right? Like we're not seeing. I think if anything, the high Evo stuff is pushing people away from the go wide. Like
yeah,
I saw someone playing Zoo the other day. I'm like, man, I love Zoo. I don't know how someone's playing Zoo right now unless they're packing that Luke Cage heat. Because like I think playing Zoo right now would feel awful. Because you have so many cards on the field and they can just kind of take advantage of that. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think in the current meta, I think 2099 could be a good card. And then the thing that makes him even better is just the fact that you can just put him in a Zabu deck. Because Zabu is pretty nutty. And I do wonder if this is a little bonus thing. So TN, we mentioned TN tweeted out some decks for the high Evo, but there was a mistake on his initial tweet out, and it had Zabu with 1 power instead of 2 power, and he deleted it and he re-uploaded it, and he basically said that it was on. Sounded like he was saying an old version, but
So I
that could
wouldn't
just
take
be
that as
a.
a I wouldn't take that as a nerf. Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I wonder if they were experimenting with that as a way of tapering down the Stature Black Bolt decks
Well, I
that
think
were
just the
Zabu.
Zabu decks in general. And
Yeah.
frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if Zabu did get hit a little bit harder, but like nerfing Zabu by 1 power is going to be would be the most minor change. Some of the people who are not Zabu fans, I've seen requests that he only lets you do it once a turn, so you can't do 2 4 drops. But I think he'd just be dead. He would be like absurdly dead
That
if they
also
did
sounds
that
like it
to
would
him.
be exceedingly annoying to program in the game engine.
I guess. Well, I guess I don't know. Just make it like once a turn you get this effect. But anyway, it's. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't even think this is. I don't think they're necessarily going to adjust him. But if they did, and if this was an accidental leak,
We'll
well, we'll
find out.
see. But it would be incredibly inconsequential to the Zabu deck. Like you're not leaning on your 2 power Zabu to win games. It's
Yeah.
your Zabu enabling you to have a much better curve out with your 4 drops, which is like kind of the whole point of running him. But it'll be interesting to see if that comes to fruition or not in the next OTA. They said the next OTA is on the 8th, and then I think we're gonna get a patch the week after that.
Hmm.
It's not really set in stone because I think typically they've done the third Tuesday of the month, and the third Tuesday of June is the 20th. But I think they're gonna do it on the 13th, so we'll see. It's 13th or the 20th of June. We're gonna get the patch with Conquest mode, and I think that's also going to include some of the other stuff they talked about last update, like the weekend quests. So there's like, I don't know, you can earn some more credits by playing on the weekend. People have been asking for that for a long time, some way to earn stuff outside of like their dailies and weeklies.
hmm
So that's
Yeah.
kind of cool. And they're also probably going to add that token feature where you'll get a quest with a card if you buy a new card to earn some tokens back, like a little rebate. So I'm curious to see how all that stuff goes down. So we're really not that far out from it. We're basically somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks, roughly. Which is cool because I think Conquest is going to be probably one of the bigger moments for the game since launch. I would
Hmm.
go as far to say, like, I think it's going to be a really huge addition.
Yep.
Well, I think that takes us to everything that we wanted to discuss tonight, and I will congratulate you all in that we kept it under 3 hours.
I'm
Kept under
impressed.
2 even. Look at that.
Technically, there's still time to go over. But yeah, no, I think that there's a lot going on in the game right now, and it felt like there was enough to talk about. hopefully when we next meet, it'll spare us from having a 4-hour session, which probably would have happened.
Oh, it definitely would
Oh
have.
yeah,
We had to talk
yeah.
about all this plus whatever else happens in the next week.
You can say what you want about Snap, but there is a lot happening week over week in this game. Good, bad, ugly, and everything in between. You don't have these like long droughts of news or like stagnant metas. Like, I mean, just think of it, right? In the span of like a week, the meta fundamentally shifted twice with the wave change with the release of High Evo, and it will likely change again with balance updates and the the new battle pass that's coming in June. So even if you're like me and you're not thrilled about the way things are at present, there's only one thing that's certain, and that's things will change.
And that's keep it Cosmo.
Yeah,
Yep.
change is keeping a Cosmo. So we'll leave it there. If you want to get your YouTubes and socials out there, guys, before we call it a night. Just as an aside, are we gonna have an after show with some games, or we think we're gonna call it
We can
there?
do that. Yeah.
If we do, I think I wanna pass it over to zombies because I'm going off of very little sleep, and I don't want to
Sure. Yeah.
commit to running it all night. I'll
Sure.
hang out for a bit for sure, but
Yeah, that's no problem.
stayed
We
up
don't
way
have
too
to.
late
I was
last
just,
night.
I was
and-
just asking the question.
Oh no,
so.
I'm down to see. I want to see this. I'm really interested to see this high evo control lane lock thing. So I mean, or whatever else y'all are playing. So I'm down. It's always fun.
So Nate,
Yeah. So yeah, my name's Nate. My wife started a TikTok for our cats this week. So I'm
yes, I knew I forgot
So I want to
something.
push that because it's really
Yeah.
it's so funny. Like she's been thinking about this for a long time. She's like, I want to do this. I'm like, oh my god, welcome to the world of content creation, right? But it's she's got a couple like in the pipe, and they're very funny, and I'm entertained. And if if anybody's interested in checking out silly short videos of my my cute cats, there you go. I'll just throw the link in the chat here. But
not on TikTok, so I hope you curate the best.
no, I think
of,
she's gonna put it on YouTube as well. But
Okay.
but TikTok has the better like filters or whatever
yeah.
it is. But like I don't use it either. Well, I do now, but I only follow one person. So
Right.
The
Anyways.
algorithm's gonna flood you with all the cats.
oh
There
gosh.
could be worse
One
things to
thing
be
you
flooded
engage
with.
That's
Oh
true. That's
yeah,
true.
yeah. They're fun. They're fun. It's she's just goofing around, and I'm entertained by it. I love it. It's the cats' names when we got them. They're from the same litter, brother and sister, and one's name is Mouse and the other's name is Driver. And as it turns out, the mom's name was Minnie. So Minnie Mouse, Minnie Driver, right? Anyways, so it's tiktok.com/@mouse-and-drivers-mom. So there you go. But the link is in chat if anyone's interested in checking it out. I think there's only 2 videos up there right now, but they're cute. So there you go. You can see my cats.
I dig it.
We do a Wild Hearthstone podcast on Friday nights too on this channel. We hosted a giant, like our finals for our tournament series were this morning, and we had people in. So the finals were this morning between Kenray and NHL, and Kenray's in Singapore, and Marty is in freaking Sweden, and so and then all of us over here in the U.S. Some in East Coast, some in West Coast, and trying to juggle the time zones was just awful. And so I've been up since 6 o'clock this morning. Which I do normally for work, but not on a Saturday. Anyways, no, but I'm good. I'm was a lot of fun hanging out with you guys. I'm really enjoying Snap a lot. I think, like Blue said, there's never a dull moment. That's for sure. And I think as much as many negative things can be said about the funky card acquisition system, I do kind of enjoy the trickle release because it just feels new all the time. And it never really feels stale, and that is keeping me very engaged. So I like it.
Barry's far in the rearview mirror.
The new big bad has arrived.
Yeah.
So
Right.
tell us about your YouTube channel, Zombies.
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube. Still doing pretty regular stuff over there. Just put out video for the location tonight. Got some Evo Darkhawk stuff going up tomorrow, so cool stuff planned there. Also, still doing stuff for Snap Zone, so you can check out their YouTube. I'm doing posting for them. Infinite Decks of the Week coming to you tomorrow. It's probably my favorite thing I do with them is go through and take a look at a bunch of the decks that the community had success with. And it's not so much like, hey, this is what's meta necessarily, but I think that's one of the things about Snap that's kind of cool is that people have success with a lot of different stuff. So it kind of shows like anybody can kind of, I think to a certain extent, if you play well and you have like a level head with your snapping and retreating, really do think you can succeed with like almost anything in this game. Maybe not Baron Mordo, but like a lot of you can succeed with decks that would otherwise probably not be seen as the best. And I think that's a great thing, and I really love getting to highlight different people's decks in the community. So look forward to that. We do that every Sunday on the Snap Zone YouTube, and they have a accompanying article. So check that out. Other than that, I do stream on Twitch. We'll probably hop over there, I guess, to play some games tonight. Trying to stream more regularly. Been a little busy recently, but I think June should be a pretty big month, and I might be throwing some Diablo into the mix too because I'm really excited for that game.
Is that
and
coming out in June also?
yeah, the early release is like is it the first? I think it's the first.
Oh, so that's right
So
around the
it's
corner then.
soon.
It's coming
Thursday,
out
yeah.
super soon. Yeah,
It's like
I'm looking
next
forward
week
to
for
it as
early
well.
release, and not early release. I think is the Tuesday, so it's like it's right when the new Snap season starts. So I'm looking
Great.
forward to that. I'm a big Diablo fan, so I'll probably be streaming some of that. We'll see how it
It
goes, but
I
Very cool.
didn't play the beta, but gosh, I've played every
it
single
was
Diablo
fun.
game.
It was very fun.
Minus the
I'm a fan.
yeah, looks cool. Looks cool.
Oh boy, I'm gonna have to steer clear of that.
Oh God, I know. Heaven forbid there's microtransactions too. I know I probably need to steer away from it myself, but
Well, it's not like the phone game that I can.
Which is such a shame. We had so much fun with it last summer when it first came out, and then
It's a
it
great
kinda,
game. It just is
yeah.
ruined by it being a mobile game, which I mean, I think that's what we've been trying to stop happening with Snap is like we want mobile games. Unfortunately, come with these less than ideal business practices.
Yet I can't stay away. I've been
Yep.
playing the Hoyo versus new game Star Rail a lot, and I've been enjoying that, and that's enough for me. So we'll have to stay away from everything else. All these games want you to be the only game that you play, right?
Yeah,
And
that's kind of the issue, right? You can't play them all.
yeah. You can find me on Twitter, twitter.com/Blutrane. Also, the podcast has a Twitter as well at Born to Be Cosmo, twitter.com/Born to Be Cosmo. You can follow us there for when we go live and generally try to retweet news from Snap Zone and Browday's Twitter. So you should probably just get it straight from them there. Generally just like to retweet them so that we have everything organized when we put together our show notes. Also, tweet out impromptu polls with hot takes. Gotta try and be a little bit more sensitive about that, as it's not just my Twitter. But I can't be helped. By the way, 60-40 split on Hulk Smash versus Luke Cringe. So I think for now it's fair to say that people are enjoying themselves, and again, you should always enjoy yourself with whatever deck you decide to play. Don't let anyone ever tell you what you should or shouldn't enjoy. It's the balance team's job to balance the game, not by people policing themselves. I just think the play rate's a little bit high for high Evo. It's a little frustrating that there aren't more diverse strategies that counter into it. Although perhaps I'm just not playing the best one, which is Stature and Black Bolt. But yeah, it's like that old meme. No, not like that. Anyways, we'll leave it there. We're gonna probably do some games, so if you want to stick around for that, that'll be a good time. And we'll be back probably next week. We have our podcast scheduled, so not probably, we will be. So look out for times and announcements on that. Until then, keep it Cosmo.
Keep it Cosmo.
Enough said, bub.
Keep it Cosmo. Love it.